rugby league, it continues to be the gift that keeps on giving, with two massive stories dominating the news cycle after round 8. Welcome to the Fair Dinkum department. Today we've got a very simple task. We're deciding if the weekend's biggest footy stories, are they a bit real? Are they a bit ridiculous? We're talking our age. That's what we do. I'm Chris Danks, Liam O'Loughlin, fresh off the bench, coming back in. Good to have you back, mate.
Thank you, mate. Back from a spell. Unlike Adamo, I'm back. I'm not going into retirement, so keen to get stuck back into things.
Heaps to get through. We'll start with the big one. Tom Turbo did get injured on Sunday night on the near catastrophe for Manly. I genuinely thought they were going to lose.
Yeah, it looked like they were going to lose at one stage, but a good mate of mine that's a Tigers supporter, he said, no, we've scored way too early here. We've hit the lead way too early. Didn't get his hopes up, and he was justified in that. The Tigers now, 0-6, 0-7 for the season, so things aren't looking great for them, but things aren't looking great for Manly either with Turbo.
Yeah, exactly. So he's gone off with a groin injury, got run down by a prop. Although, as when we were talking this morning, he's never been quick off the line, so I think people are slightly blowing up a bit too much over that. But still was run down by a prop. But he has been injured. It's a groin injury. Manly are saying that they don't think it's too serious, that they just brought Tom off because it was a wet night, doesn't have a great injury history. How bad is it, do you think? Should people be losing their minds over this?
Maybe not losing their minds, but it is a concern, like especially when all throughout the season he hasn't looked at 100%.
Yeah.
You haven't seen him hit that top speed. You haven't seen him light up a game like he was in 2021. Getting run down by a prop is probably only going to raise those concerns. And now he has got caught in an awkward kind of tackle and hurt his groin a little bit there yesterday against the Tigers. So it will be interesting. He'll go for scans. They seemed reasonably confident that he's not going to be out for too long. But even then, a couple of weeks or 3 weeks on the sideline is not ideal timing for Manly.
I had to do a bit of a Google search this morning. I thought Tom Turbo was like 27, 28. He's only 26. So he's not as old as many would probably think, but it does seem like he's injured a fair bit.
Yeah, and he just has that, like, such a rangy frame, and just the way he plays, he's going to be prone to, especially soft tissue injuries, as we've seen, throughout his career, especially with the hammies as well. But yeah, it's disappointing for Manly, and it's potentially disappointing for New South Wales as well.
Yeah, which is really the only reason why I care. I wouldn't wish being a Manly fan on my worst enemy. But if there was one position maybe for the Blues where they could lose an out-and-out star of the game, like Tom Trbojevic, it's maybe the centres. They've got a fair bit of coverage there. Yeah,
the outside backs are certainly a strong area for the Blues heading into this Origin series. You look at guys like Stephen Crichton and Campbell Graham are in really good form. Latrell is obviously going to be one of the centres if he's fit. Hopefully he is, especially after this. Obviously Turbo, if he's fit, he's available, he's anywhere near 100%, Freddie will probably lean towards picking him. But I don't know, it does present a bit of a dilemma, for the Blues if you're carrying a bloke into a game, especially a game like Origin that's maybe not at 100%, not playing their, to their absolute potential, as we've seen with Turbo this year, and you've got so many other options, does make it a little bit difficult.
So I guess a lot of the conversation in the weeks coming up will be, should the Blues actually give up on Turbo, like as a long-term project? Fair? A little bit ridiculous?
I think it's pretty fair, to be honest.
Even though he's only 26?
Yeah, I mean,
which isn't actually that young in footy.
No, it's not, especially with the amount of injuries that he has had during his career. I just think with the other options they've got, I mentioned Stephen Crichton and Campbell Graham, but there's so many other guys, like Katoni Staggs as well. He's probably someone that's fallen a little bit off the radar after he did appear for the Blues last year, but he's been pretty good for the Broncos so far. Joseph Suaalii is obviously playing in the centres, and Matt Burton's a premiership winner in the centres, and he's already had a little taste of Origin as well. So we do have a lot of options there for New South Wales in the centres and out wide. And Campbell Graham's been spoken about playing on the wing potentially, but he could just as easily play in the centres as he does in clubland. So I wouldn't be picking Turbo even if he is back playing for Manly, just because the risk is probably not worth it.
Yeah, I just can't wrap my head around it. Because there is that everyone, still got that one series. Was it 2021? Or he just, whatever he did.
I think it was 21.
Was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, everything he touched turned to gold. But yeah, I don't know if the risk is worth it, because you have so many other options. If they didn't have options, If you had to chuck in a Bradman Best or a Zach Lomax, they were your next best option.
Yep.
Probably risk the 80% fit Turbo, but when you've got guys like Graham and Crichton, who are already international players and they're so young and they've got so much good footy ahead of them, probably lean towards those two.
Would you keep Wighton as your 14?
Well, considering he's retired from rep footy.
Oh, God.
Probably not.
Guess who's been on holidays for a few days?
I mean, he would have been my 14, but now that presents another interesting selection decision for Brad Fittler.
That was going to be the perfect segue into Jack Wighton to the Rabbitohs.
To the Rabbitohs.
Everyone's got an opinion on it. So it's a massive story, obviously, because the Rabbitohs, you can see it from their point of view. They're getting a gun player. It really extends their premiership window. I don't love it because I think the NRL needs a good team in Canberra. And if you don't have Jack Wighton on the posters, who you got?
Tarpanay, Papali. Yeah. There's not a great deal of superstars in that Canberra outfit from an individual aspect. But this is a massive, massive coup for the Rabbitohs if they can pull it off, which it looks like they're going to. I know when before I went away on holidays, when Wighton first announced he was going to hit the open market, South were immediately a team I thought they could have a crack here. They've got a lot of players off contract at the end of 24.
Yep.
They've got some big guns off contract at the end of 25, which I'm sure we'll run through in a second. But I thought he was someone that makes sense, and obviously that close relationship that he does have with Latrell from their time in rep footy together is obviously going to play into South's hand here.
So 4-year deal worth reported 3.4, less than Canberra.
A lot less than Canberra and the Dolphins, yeah. Almost $1 million less over the 4 years, which is... Obviously, he's not doing this for a financial gain, Jack Wighton. He's doing this for, the desire to win a premiership.
Yep.
If he was still seeking money, he wouldn't be letting go of 90, 100 grand a year as well with Origin because he'd be walking into the team. So
very good point.
It's obviously not a financial thing for him.
How good would that feel if you're a Souths fan and you're like watching the Jack Wighton news, like retiring from rep footy, and you're like, perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Like the Raiders have had to suffer through every single year, losing their gun player through the rep season. Now just comes to South Sydney and he's going to play all year. So let's go through some of the players that they might lose. So we know that Damien Cook and Cody Walker will likely retire 2025, or at least Souths are hoping that so they can back end the contract.
Yeah, it's obviously going to be a back-ended deal, you would think, if they're signing Wighton, just with the amount of high-profile players they've got in their current top 30 roster. Even closer to, obviously next year is when Jack will be coming in, supposedly. You've got Campbell Graham. Wouldn't think he's going anywhere. Local junior, one of the best centres in the competition, still so young. Keon Kalamatangi, probably close to the best second row in the comp. Local junior as well. I can't see those two going, but there's a lot of other names in that South Sydney roster that are off contract at the end of next year that I think could possibly move on or be forced out or squeezed out, just given the Wighton stuff and how much money he's going to take up in their cap. Tavita Totola, Jai Arrow are probably the two, I think, possibly.
Yeah.
In terms of big names.
Well,
Isaiah Tass, you would think, is probably going to get squeezed out. Might be tough for him to hold Jack Wighton out of that centre position.
Tom Burgess.
Tom Burgess is probably, I would think, maybe going to retire at the end of 24. He's only re-signed for a further season. He's such a stalwart of the club. Most capped forward in South Sydney history. But I would think if he's only signed a 1-year extension, he's probably thinking about hanging them up. But that could open up a lot of room in the salary cap for South, and obviously Cook and Walker, as you mentioned, in 25. And then that gives them another 2 years of Wighton after that. And then the other one is Cam Murray off contract at the end of 25, which... could be
interesting timing.
Yeah, very interesting timing, given Eddie Jones returning to the fold with Rugby Australia and their desire to land some big fish from the rugby league world, and Cam Murray be at the top of that list, just given his history in schoolboy rugby with Newington. So, yeah, that's one to watch out for as well.
So, real, ridiculous. Should the Bunnies clean house for Wighton, do you reckon?
I don't think cleaning house they should. No, I think if you're going to lose a Campbell Graham or a Keon Kalamatangi to bring in Jack Wighton, who's 30 years old and going to play in the centres and take up 850, 900,000 a year, probably not. But if you're going to lose maybe a forward and a couple of fringe outside backs and make up the money at the back end of his deal, I think it's probably fair enough.
I like it. Back-ended contracts. Very Des Hasler of you.
Yeah, Raylene Castle, she's taken over at South Sydney.
Let's look at the other side of it, though. Jack Wighton and the Raiders. There's always going to be two sides to the story. There's been a little bit of chatter about the really Jack should remain a one-club player, show a bit of loyalty to the side, which you stood by him when 2018, obviously there was the assault charge, stood down for 6 matches, and I think the NRL made it into 10 matches, fined 30 grand. All that. He's re-signed and they've stayed by him. And I think, in my mind, he's repaid them. I think.
Can't really say they haven't won a comp for mine.
Has he had the cattle around him to win a comp?
I mean, they made a grand final. They weren't far off.
Yeah.
So,
and he's lucky he's won a Dalian medal. He's represented at every level.
Yeah. Yeah, it is tough. I don't like that narrative that players should owe clubs because they do have such a short career. I know I've mentioned that plenty, but having a short career, you want to maximise your earning. And in this case, he wants to maximise his football and his desire to win a premiership. And obviously at the moment, he doesn't see that in the short to medium term future for Canberra.
Long term as well.
Long term maybe, but I don't know. It is tough. Like you'd love to see, local products come through and remain one club players, but it doesn't always work out that way. It's unfortunate. You've seen it plenty of times where players leave towards the back end of their career and they find success. Perfect example is Cooper Cronk. Yeah. He was at Melbourne his whole career and then he left for, differing reasons, went and won 2 comps with the Roosters. So Jack's hoping to replicate that kind of thing if he goes to South Sydney. But yeah, I don't subscribe to the whole he should owe Canberra something because he's off contract. He's got every right to do what he wants.
Yeah. And I think he's approaching it pretty, he's been open about everything.
Yeah, he's not going behind closed doors and going behind the Raiders' back. He's being pretty upfront. It's all played out very publicly as well, which doesn't always happen with, especially, high-profile players. All the Mitch Moses stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That was all very, he said, she said, behind closed doors. This is all very public. Like Wayne Bennett and Jason Demetriou have both come out publicly and said, yeah, we've spoken to him. Yeah, we want to bring him in. This is what it's going to look like. Usually that wouldn't happen. So it is very interesting, the whole Jack Wighton stuff. And yeah, it's disappointing for the Raiders.
I think we can both agree the whole Jack Wighton knowing the Raiders stuff, it's a bit of a ridiculous thing.
I think so, yeah.
Although, as I said, I would like to see him stay with the milk.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Whatever you're doing, I just came back from holidays and I broke, so threw me some cash, Jack. Rugby union. Rugby union cap exemption. So the great PVL is now floating the idea that maybe NRL clubs will be given cap exemptions to lure in foreign-born players or just foreign players or players from rival codes. That includes the union. People keep using the example of Max Jorgensen. Obviously, his dad was the great Peter. He's 18. I think he's just turned 18. He's going to play for the Wallabies. Turned down the Roosters. I don't understand any of this. It feels like the existential threat for footy, right? It's either we do it in a cycle where it's union for 5 years, then it's AFL. Remember when Izzy and Kay Hunt and a few people went to the AFL and were like, they're going to rate all our players. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Someone will always replace them. I don't think it's a big thing. I think it will continue up until the Rugby World Cup just because it's a storyline. But I think it's useless.
That
was more of a statement than me asking for anything else.
I can't believe this is even something that V'landys has come out and said publicly. Putting extra money for a club to sign a young, unheralded rugby union player from, South Africa or Argentina, places they're talking about, or talking about college footballers that miss out on an NFL contract and stuff like that. What are you talking about? Yeah. Just sign players under the cap, how it's always been. It's not a broken model, so I don't know why we need to fix it. There's so many rugby union, junior rugby union players that have signed with rugby league clubs. Cam Murray, I just said, Angus Crichton, they were rugby union guys growing up.
Toby Rudolph was a union guy.
Yeah, there's so many that we've taken from their sport. They've taken one big name from ours, and now shit's hit the fan, and we're coming up with all these different ways to try and get one over on them. I think it's just an ego thing on the NRL's behalf, to be honest.
It just makes no sense, man. I love the arguments from both sides where it's if you play union, you can travel the world and you can do this, and you're still allowed to travel. You can play footy.
Yeah, they've got
mate, you don't play all year.
They've got an off season. I had to laugh. I think Andrew Johns was on either Immortal Behaviour or Freddie in the 8th. He come out and he said, Hamish McLennan keeps talking about you get to see the world, and he said, I'll book a Kentucky tour for the boys and they'll see the world that way. So, I think it's just egos involved, isn't it? It's PVL trying to get one up on the
Yeah.
Rugby Australia boss, and he's throwing the bait out there as well, Hamish, and
100%.
he's getting a few bites. It's working, but yeah, I don't agree at all. I think it's pretty ridiculous, any notion that NRL clubs should be given up to $1 million. The Herald are reporting, to sign random players from the other side of the world in a different sport. Just if you want to sign them, do it under the cap.
I think it feels like it's kind of from the playbook from 15 years ago when you were just a league fan, or you were just a union fan, or like, heaven forbid you ever watched Aussie Rules. But like, it's just not the way fans are anymore. Like, people follow one athlete, or they follow multiple. Like, I love watching Union. Granted, only shoot Shield because Super Rugby's whatever. but like, you're allowed to watch multiple sports. It's so fine. It's not this big threat.
Yeah, you don't have to only watch rugby league and only enjoy rugby league. Like, I mean, I don't know many people that do enjoy rugby union, but especially the Super Rugby level, as you said. But yeah, I don't think we need to be, blowing up and starting again with, salary cap and rules just because of one player going to union.
Ridiculous.
But
looking forward to talking about it again next week.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, once Payne Haas signs a $3 million a year deal to play for the Waratahs in front of 2,000 people.
Yeah,
beautiful.
All right, let's move on to hip drops.
Yeah, speaking of Payne Haas, there we go.
Do you want to give us the roundup of what happened on the weekend?
I'd rather not, but yeah, sure. The Eels-Broncos game on Friday night was just diabolical from the hip drop perspective. Payne Haas is the big one. He was charged grade 2, dangerous contact. He's going to miss one game with an early plea for a tackle that ended in a disappointing injury for Regan Campbell-Gillard, but it was so clearly an accident.
Yeah.
He wasn't sin-binned. On the flip side, Jermaine Hopgood was sin-binned. They were down by a fair bit, but it was still a crucial time in the game. Hopgood was sin-binned, hit with a grade 1 charge, only getting fined $750. Yeah. So I don't know where they're going with the hip drop stuff. There's been a big crackdown in the last few weeks. Obviously, I've been away, so I haven't seen a lot of it, but I've read a lot about it. And yeah, it doesn't appear to me that referees know what hip drop is. It doesn't appear to me that players, coaches, commentators, us know what a hip drop really is. When they first started penalising and suspending blokes for hip drops, it was so clear.
Yeah, 100%.
It was when a player was stationary in a tackle, one bloke holding him up, and then another bloke comes down with his weight on the backs of his or the sides of his legs. Now it's any time anyone gets tackled around the legs and they stay down holding their knee or their hip or their groin. Like, it's contact sport. I know that's such a cliche and it's such a boomer old
You're about
school.
to say you can't play the game in slow motion.
But you can't tackle high, you can't tackle late, you can't tackle around the legs. Like, at this stage you may as well just put the bloody Velcro straps on the side and play Oz-Tac. I can't believe that things like the Payne Haas one the other night are getting penalised. I know someone got injured, but it's just ridiculous.
That was a tough one for Haas. Well, obviously you look at the injury. If you're just reading the report and you go, all right, well, someone was injured during it. It's probably a pretty ordinary tackle. But then you watch it and you look at the position that RCG was in, and it was in the wet as well. You can understand how it could happen.
Yeah, things happen. You've got 210, 115 kilo blokes.
And the
one's trying to struggle to the try line and the other one's trying to bring him down. Like, there was no malice in it. He wasn't stationary, and Haas has come down on his, bringing all his body weight down. It's just a clear accident. So I don't know where the NRL are going with this. And someone, Graham Annesley most likely, or the referee's boss, or someone, just not Volandis, someone else, needs to come out, get on the front foot and say, give a clear description of what a hip drop tackle is, because at the moment, the referees especially don't appear to know what it is.
Same. Finally, Josh Hodgson at the Eels. So, Reid Marnie's left the Eels at the end of the season. Everyone knew that was going to be a big loss once he's gone to the Dogs. Had himself a career year last year. Josh Hodgson, great career. He's 33 though, so people were questioning that. He's
coming off an ACL.
Coming off an ACL.
Like his third ACL.
And then hasn't lit the world on fire. Up in Darwin over the weekend, coming off a flu, as you said, still probably not 100%, but had himself a very, very tough game. I think he was pulled in the 31st minute, something like that.
Yeah. Didn't come back on.
For an 80-minute hooker as well.
Yeah, so they've obviously signed him. I don't know dollars and cents in regards to Josh Hodgson's deal with the Eels, but at the moment, whatever they're paying him, probably too much. He's looked a shell of his former self, and it's really disappointing. Obviously, he's been such a great player. He was such a great player for the Raiders for a long time. At the international level as well for England. Very classy dummy half, but he just looks very, very slow and lethargic. His passing game off the deck especially, which was such a strong point for him at Canberra, is now nowhere near what it used to be. And his defence the other night against the Broncos, tough conditions I know, but yeah, not great. Missing 5 tackles, making 15 and getting hooked after 30, not coming back on. So
0 runs as well?
Yeah, it didn't take a run, but at this stage of his career, that's probably not what he's in the team for. But yeah, they're getting a lot more spark and a lot more direction around the ruck out of Brendan Hands off the bench.
So, I don't know, because he's 33. You know, a younger player, much like we saw with Sam Walker, they'd be like, we'll drop him to Rezzies, let him get a bit of confidence back. Josh Hodgson's played at the highest level. I don't know if that would 100% work for him, but what do you reckon? Should the Eels drop Josh Hodgson?
I think they've got to be pretty close to looking at it because they're not winning a lot of games. I know it's still early-ish in the season, but you don't want you don't want the top 8 to get away from you. They lose a couple more in the next month, and Josh Hodgson's still not performing. I don't know what the answer is because Brendan Hand's inexperienced. I don't think he's an 80-minute hooker. The only other guy they've got in their books is Mitch Rain, who's been around for a long time. He could probably do a similar job to what Hodgson is doing. And probably be a little bit more effective in defence. Play that first 30, 35 minutes and then Hands comes on either side of half-time and adds some spark. So they do have an option there in Mitch Rain. It's not the most exciting option, but yeah, look, if things don't turn around quickly, I think Hodgson's probably going to be seeing out his career this season in reserve grade.
It's a tough call because you can't, Hodgson, because of the way he plays now. He's not an impact player off the bench.
No, he
has to start.
Yeah.
But then if he's not going to play 80, tough one.
Yeah, and usually
going to be earning his cash.
Yeah, usually when hookers are starting a game and they've got someone exciting on the bench, it's usually to take the sting out of the game a little bit. Someone that's going to make their tackles and get through their work, pass off the deck. But he's not doing that very effectively at the moment. You look at someone like Mitch Kenny at the Panthers. Not the most exciting player, but gets to his work, and then Sonny Luke comes on and causes some havoc around the ruck. So if they can maybe bring Mitch Rain in, it might be a little bit more effective than what they've got going at the moment. But yeah, it's a tough call for Brad Arthur. Don't envy him.
I don't, but also there's no one that jumps out at me that is either off contract or is probably not getting minutes at a rival club. That I'm like, he could 100% slot in at like a good price point and would be an improvement.
Yeah, Moses Mbye has been playing a lot of hooker for the Dragons this year, so he's someone that they should probably look at, could look at. So, but yeah, there's not a hell of a lot going around in terms of quality number 9s in the competition in general, and guys that are off contract as well.
Oof. Oh, well, that's it.
That's it.
Round 8 in the books.
Back into it.
We'll be back next week.
Beautiful.
Catch you then.